My name is Deborah Kerbel. I'm an award-winning author of 8 novels for middle grade and young adult readers, as well as 1 graphic novel, several board books, and oodles of picture books. When I first started writing and publishing many years ago, one of the very first people I met in this business was Mahtab Narsimhan, who was just getting ready to publish her very first novel, The Third Eye. I'm sure many of you have already read that book, and many others of Mahtab's as well. We have been great friends, pub siblings, and critique partners ever since. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce the star of today's show, Mahtab Narsimhan. Mahtab's name in Persian means moonlight. She has had 4 careers in her lifetime. Writing is her 5th and her favorite. While training to be a general manager of a hotel, she once had to peel and chop a 20-kilogram bag of onions. That's 44 pounds of onions in one day. Mahtab came to Canada in 1997 and started writing in 2004. Her first novel, The Third Eye, won the Silver Birch Fiction Award in 2009, and she has not looked back since. Mahtab loves to include kids from every part of the globe in her stories. Welcome everyone to the launch of Project Bollywood. And welcome, Mahtab.
Thank you so much, Deb. That was such a lovely, lovely introduction. And I am so thrilled to be, launching this with you because, as you said, we go back such a long way and, just we're critique partners. We love each other's work. And so I'm thrilled that you're here. So yeah, let's get started.
Thank you. Okay, so let's get started. Before we get to the good stuff, I'm just going to mention a few housekeeping items so we're all on the same page, as it were. Number 1, please feel free to submit questions at any time using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. You can also click the thumbs up icon to upvote questions from other attendees. We have 3 fabulous prizes to give away. They include a signed copy of the book in question, munchies, and a list of Mahtab's favorite Bollywood movies, perfect for movie night at home. And number 3, the draw for the prizes will be random, and the winners will be picked from all of those who've asked questions during the launch today. So if you are a winner, and we're going to choose those names at the end, please make sure that you send us your mailing address so Mahtab can get your prize in the mail to you. Okay, so before we get to questions for Mahtab, I would like to start off by saying how much I really enjoyed this book. I love all of your books, Mahtab. But this one, to me, stands out in several ways. It was so fast-paced. On the back, I love it. It lets the kids know this is a page turner, and it really, really was. I felt the scenes were just so visual and vivid. It was a lot of fun. And it was very realistic in terms of your characters and their voices and the settings and the problems that they were facing. So well done you. An excellent, excellent book, as always. So I would love to know, just as we get started, what inspired you to write the story?
Well, I have to say, because, I love Hindi movies. Now, I know most people outside of India would call it a Bollywood movie because that's what the film industry in India is known as, or at least the most well-known. But any self-respecting Indian who has grown up in India is familiar with Hindi movies. And it was such a huge part of my growing up. And it's just like, there are different kinds of movies. There are the commercial blockbusters that have got everything, from, love and sorrow and revenge and abandonment and loss and everything in a 3-hour span with, of course, lots of dancing and singing in the rain and songs, which are filmed in exotic locations. But I just love them because for me, it was also a sense of escape. And I remember even as a child, when I was growing up in Mumbai, I used to live in the heart of Mumbai in this really narrow lane. And every year, whenever there was a festival, whether it was Diwali or it was Navratri or it was Ganesh Chaturthi, and these are all just various festivals. But one of the celebration items was the the community that was kind of looking after the social events or the programming would go from house to house. They'd collect some donations, and then they would rent a movie projector, and there would be this huge screen. It was kind of like a homemade movie theater where they would have the screen set up in the lane, in the small little lane, and it was kind of tied at two ends, and the lane was so narrow that you could just literally just put this huge screen, and they would have the movie projectors playing, and they would be playing these blockbusters, and the entire lane would be kind of just sitting there. And of course, sometimes when it rained, everyone would be running indoors and popping out their heads out of the windows to watch it. So I remember all of those scenes. Just Hindi movies are so much fun, and Netflix, I'm happy to say, is airing some of the best ones now. So yeah.
Well, that sounds like so much fun. I wish I could have been there for some of those movie nights with the whole neighborhood. That just sounds so lovely. And when you said it starts to rain and people would run inside, I thought you were going to say, and then when it started to rain, everyone started to dance. I know
you know what? That sometimes did happen. I mean, if you had a movie like Sholay or Amar Akbar Anthony, I mean, these are classics. And if you had a song that people, like, even though they've seen it, they'd just, you'd have the kids just stand up in front of the screen and they'd be dancing. So yes, that would happen too. It's a huge part of any movie.
Wow. It sounds amazing. Okay, so I have some questions for you about the story. Now that we know what inspired it, and my questions are going to be very carefully worded because I don't want to give anything away, no spoilers in any of these questions. But from the very first chapter, we hear that Salman's parents both work in IT. Salman is the main character and the young man on the cover right there, who has a vision to produce Bollywood movies. We find that his parents work in IT, and this takes up a lot of their time. They're away from home a lot, they're always working. So I was wondering, for you, as someone who has worked in the demanding IT world, how do you find time to balance that with also being a full-time and extremely prolific author?
Thank you for asking that, and thank you for saying that. I actually managed to get my hands on Hermione's time turner. No, I'm kidding. I think it just takes a lot of discipline and planning. And it's a good thing that I'm a morning person. I get up early in the morning before anyone's up. And this has been going on, ever since I started writing. Even when I had a full-time job in the corporate sector in Toronto, I used to get up by 5:30. I would put in at least an hour and a half of work before I went into work. In my lunch hour, all my kind of team members knew that unless it is a matter of life and death, we are not to disturb Mahtab at all. So I would be in my office and having my lunch and then putting in another 100, 200 words, whatever. So it just takes a lot of discipline. And the fact is that I think most of us do have the time in the day. We just have to make sure that we allot that time and we sit and we do the job. And, for me, I've never ever waited for the inspiration to strike. I know this is my window to write. So it is literally bum and chair, hands on keyboard, start typing. And so it's kind of worked out. But I have to say that it takes discipline, it takes practice. And luckily, I've been doing it for a long time so that I can keep doing it.
Right. And that very disciplined schedule, by now, after so many years, I'm guessing it's just become so much a part of your daily habits that it doesn't feel, are you still waking up at 5:30 in the morning to write, or was that
6 o'clock
back in the day?
I think I sleep in for about half an hour now extra. And Sundays, I mean, I'll allow myself to sleep till about 7. But you know what? I've been working 7 days a week these days. I mean, I'll take half a day off if I absolutely need to, but yeah.
I remember back in the day when we were both new writers and kind of developing our own routines, and you gave me a piece of advice that you try to write 1,000 words every day. That was back then. Do you still aim for that now?
I aim for about 1,500 these days, only because I think I've gotten into the groove of writing. I mean, I know, and I think my planning has become a lot better. Earlier, I used to be a pantser. Now I'm more of a plotter. So I have my chapters laid out. I know, I mean, there is still room for surprises, but when I'm writing a new draft of a story, it's about 1,500 words, and I'll try and go a little bit higher if I can. And always, you know, I do leave some days for when I know that I'm not going to hit that word count, but you know, in the week it kind of evens out, so it's fine. But I do aim for higher. There are some days, I think my highest has been 4,000 words on one day.
Wow.
Which
Wow.
was, it's never happened since or again, but yeah, that was my record.
Amazing. I feel very lazy and unprolific when I listen to you because I don't write that much in a day. That I'm a very slow writer, but you know, we all have what works for us. But clearly being prolific is something that really does work for you. And all of your books are, I mean, just stellar, so enjoyable. So we're certainly not compromising quality with all of that writing in a day. Okay, I have another question. In chapter 6, Ramesh tells Salman, 5 heads are better than 1. And that immediately made me think of a critique group, which we are critique partners together, and how beneficial it can be to get feedback on your work, and how collaboration can really elevate the creative experience. Salman, however, initially struggles with teamwork and collaboration in this book. Can you share with us an example of a good collaborative experience you've had and a bad one?
Well, you know what, just working with you guys, you know, in my critique group, I think when you collaborate with people that you trust, anything that comes out of that is always so much better. But the thing is that you have to be in the right space and the right frame of mind to accept that criticism. And I would say, I wouldn't even call it criticism, I would just say constructive feedback. Mm-hmm. And I remember in my early days when I was, you know, getting critiques from people, I would be devastated. I was like, you know, this felt like a personal attack. But, you know, as you grow as a writer, you welcome that. In fact, if someone wrote to me and said, or my critique partner said, oh, you know what, this is the most fantastic thing I've ever read, I'd be very suspicious, because I know nothing that we write is fantastic. In fact, till the very last draft, I am still tweaking and I'm still polishing and stuff like that. So I think each and every collaborative experience that I've had with you and with our critique group and with anyone else that I've reached out to has been good. I don't think I've had any bad collaborations, only because I only reach out to people that I really trust and exchange work with people that I really trust. And I think that's really important. And for anyone who's wondering how to do that, I think the best way, if you do want to exchange work with someone or collaborate with someone, is work with them, you know, on a smaller scale earlier. Maybe on a short story or maybe a chapter or two, see if your styles match and then go forward. But one of the things that I really love about our group is that everyone comes to it with a different perspective. Like someone's really good with the high level. For example, Helene, you know, that's Helene Becker. For those who may not know her, I absolutely love her. And she goes with the big picture and like, this doesn't work, this sucks and whatever, and which is great. Deb, your stuff is so good. It's more detailed, it's more analytical, and you know, you'll give suggestions here and there. And I love that there is someone who'll be taking a look at grammar and, you know, like this didn't quite sound right. But when you put all of that together, it is just so good. So you know what, I cannot speak to any bad experiences because they've all been good. So
there's a little note from Helene saying, I never say it sucks.
I think I found one, but you know what, Helene, all good. I love you.
Can I just say, just for the people who are out there, and if you're, you know, this really applies to all of us. You know, if you're a student in school and you get a group project, or you're a writer as well and you're looking to break in, or really whatever your medium is, that something that you're working on, it's always so beneficial to get feedback from people you trust. And I think from maybe my second or third book, when we formed our critique group, I think I've published maybe 20 books since then. Every single one of them went through our critique group. I don't think I would feel confident sending something to a publisher without sending it to my trusted critique partners first. So yes, Absolutely. The feedback is so important. And I find that picture books are more collaborative than a novel where you really have more autonomy over the story. So do you prefer to write picture books or novels?
Actually, I love novels. Picture books are very, very hard, which is why, I bow to you on all the
Mhm.
stuff that you have done. Because you know what? I know you said that you cannot write 1,000 words a day, but I would rather do 1,000 words or 1,500 on a novel than 400 or 500 on a picture book, but because that is so, so hard. Like, give me a novel any day. Picture books are just like, you could be working on them for 2, 3, 4, 5 years and still not get it right, because you've got to have an entire story arc in in 500 words, which
Yeah.
so I'm in awe of the work that you do, because you write fewer words, but each and every one of them is perfect. So
Oh, wow. Thank you. Not perfect, but
it is. But do you think
okay.
we should break for the first reading?
Sure. Let's do that. Absolutely. I'll
Okay.
let you take it away.
All right. So are we going to have a segment? Are we going to have I'm going to read a little bit from the end of the first chapter and the beginning of the second chapter, when Salman is just thinking about the movies and what he wants to do. So Salman got up and wandered into the media room. It had a giant screen TV, a perfectly calibrated surround sound system, and soft lighting. It was impressive, but it was just one room in their 14-room mansion. They also had an indoor pool, a sauna, and gym. The manicured lawns behind the house was so huge, it was hard to believe that this place was right in the middle of a big North American city. If this were a Hindi movie, their house would have belonged to a villain who had earned all his wealth through terrible and illegal means. But Salman's parents weren't villains. They were just missing all the time. Salman flopped onto the cream sofa in front of the TV. Instead of turning it on, he stared at the ceiling. The house had everything a person could want, except people to share it with. Chapter 2. Salman Khan, the popular Bollywood actor, not the scrawny teenager, was fighting a bunch of villains in Dabangg 3. His punch went right through a steel door and landed on a gangster's face. In another scene, he kicked a bad guy, and the man flipped in the air 3 times before landing with a thud. Salman flexed his muscles and stood there while the gangster pleaded for mercy. The camera angled in for a close shot of the star as dramatic music played in the background. Jason rolled on the floor of the media room, clutching his stomach and roaring with laughter. Arman crunched nonstop on potato chips. His eyes were glued to the action on the screen. Maya giggled into a pillow. Salman smiled. Even though his friends thought Bollywood movie plots were corny and made no sense, they watched all the new ones with him. He loved them for it. He also made it a point to watch the movies again with Ramesh. The second viewing was also so he could observe all the tiny details. One day he would produce, direct, and star in his own productions. He would return to Mumbai, the birthplace of the world-famous Bollywood film industry. India produced the largest number of feature films in the world per year. One day, Salman would join the ranks of those producers. So we'll end there.
Excellent. I was enjoying my popcorn as you were reading, and the great visuals were playing along with it. That was wonderful. Okay, so that was one little reading. We will have another one coming up, as well as a very special video will be upcoming in the next few minutes. But I have a few more questions, and I think that the Q&A box is starting to fill in. So I'll quickly do my questions, and then we can get to our audience's questions for you. So I would love to know, in chapter 11, Ramesh tells Salman that mistakes are the best way that we learn and grow, which I agree with wholeheartedly. And I'd love to know if you could share an example of a mistake that was a learning and growth opportunity for you.
Oh, great. Yes. You know what? I think I make mistakes all the time. And I think one of the biggest one that I've made this year especially is that I've decided I'm going to release 8 books, which is the stupidest thing I've ever done. So 2 of them are with Orca. And so the one obviously is Project Bollywood. There is Careful What You Wish For, which is coming out in August. Then I also took on, like during the pandemic, a lot of people did sourdough bread, and I did that too. But I also decided that this was the year I wanted to experiment with indie publishing. I wanted to release 3 of my own books independently published, which I did. So what normally would have taken me about 2 years took me about a year and a bit, 2 years per book. And this was like 3 books that I'm going to be releasing this year. And then I also got the rights back to my Tara trilogy from Dundurn, which I am republishing and submitting. And this on top of my full-time job, plus trying to write my, work on my next historical fantasy has been a nightmare. So even with all of my discipline and all of that stuff, I realized that this was a mistake I have made, and I have chewed on, I've taken on a lot more than I can chew. I have bitten off more than I can chew. And I realized I will never, ever do this again, because one of the things is there, however much you want to do certain things in a certain time frame, creativity suffers when the business aspect of publishing comes into play. And much as I love the control that I have from indie publishing, having everything at my fingertips and I making the decisions, it's a lot of work. It takes away from your creativity. And I have realized that is one thing I will never do again. So next year is just going to be creative. It's going to be more creation, more take your time, do the projects that you love. But you know what? This was a great and a very steep learning curve, and I will never do it again.
8 books in 1 year. I think the most I had was 6 books in 1 year, and that felt like that was a lot. And I think one of the hardest things is each book. You love each book and you want it, to find its readers and to do well. But when you have so many that you're juggling, it does take a lot of your time trying to it's like having so many children. How do you divide your attention and make sure that they all get what they need from you? So 8, I can't even imagine. And the fact that 3 of them are independently published, that's just a whole other level of commitment. So my hat's off to you. That's certainly a lot of work. And when you say you're never going to do it again, I'll believe it when I see it, because I don't think you can help yourself.
Well, never 8 books in 1 year. I will probably come out with 1 or 2, which is a much more manageable pace. But, I want to write longer, fiction. I want to write a YA, and that's, a much longer than a 40 or 50,000 word middle grade, which is where my sweet spot lies. So yeah, I am going to take my time next year. Like I did this, been there, done that. Now I'm going to slow down.
Wonderful. Well, not wonderful, because we all want more books from you, but don't slow down too much. Okay, so 2 more questions for me. What I want to know now is, in chapter 14, you write, it was all going to work out like things always did in the best Bollywood movies. And I would like to know, as an author, is that the kind of ending that you aim for in your books? Is that any different than when you're a reader, like those endings where things work out, just everything comes together? Is that what you like to do?
Actually, I have gotten feedback for most of my novels where people don't live happily ever after and things don't always work out the way they should. And I think that is what I aim for. Like, in a Bollywood movie, people do want a happy ending, and, the villain gets beaten up and punished, and, the good guys get to live happily ever after, because that's, I think, the formula, and that's what the people want to see. But in my books, I actually prefer to have a hopeful, if not a happy ending, because again, for YA and middle grade, you do have, you can play around a little bit. In middle grade, if kids are following your story or following the main characters in your story, you cannot have too tragic an ending. You've got to have a hopeful ending, which is what I aim for in most of my books. In YA, you can kind of play around a little bit and have not so much a happy ending. You can have a bit of tragedy, but by and large, I don't like a neat ending to my stories, because life is not neat. Life is not, seen through rose-tinted glasses, and I prefer to show readers or a more realistic view of life. And that means that things don't work out all the time. But the fact is that you must have the courage to go on, because change is one of the things that's going to be constant. There are disappointments, there are losses, there is abandonment, all of that stuff. And I think kids, if they see that stuff in books and they can face those kind of realities through books, it gives them the courage to face it in real life. And that's what I want to give them. I want to give them a realistic experience of life and end on a hopeful ending.
That is such a great answer. And I agree with you in every respect. A hopeful ending, not a happy ending. That's perfect. And I think that is what I try to do as well. And also, I think a hopeful ending, it leaves the story open to possibilities, and perhaps, maybe even leaves the story in your reader's mind a little bit, and they'll ponder what might have happened, I wonder what happened, after that, rather than tying everything up with that neat bow, and then you can walk away and not think about the characters anymore. So I agree. I love a hopeful ending, but not a happy one. Okay, one more question from me. In chapter 14, this is the most pressing question I have for you. Okay, I've been dying to hear your answer to this one. In chapter 14, you write, a song in a Hindi movie was like the salt in a recipe. The dish could have the best flavors, but skip the salt and it was incomplete. First of all, what is your favorite Bollywood song? And second of all, can you tweak that analogy and make it about writing? What is the salt that every book needs to be complete?
Oh, gosh. All right. So I cannot name one favorite Bollywood song because there are just so many of them that I love. And I think it all depends on the mood I'm in. There are some days when I'm in a really peppy mood and I'll listen to something that is just explosive and mind-blowing. Like one of the things that I put in the story, which is Gungru, it's a song from the movie War, I believe, and it's fantastic. And then there are some mellow songs that I love, so that's going to be a little bit hard. But I will tell you the second part of it, which is I think every story needs conflict. I mean, I think that is the salt in every story that you must read, because if things just happen easily, if the main character just earns whatever does not earn it, but he just gets whatever he wants, his goals, without any opposition, without any obstacles, without any kind of conflict, then that story is not interesting. But if there are obstacles, if that person fails a couple of times and then he or she earns that goal or that reward or that quest, completes it, then that really makes the reader root for the character. It makes it more satisfying, more fulfilling. So I would say the salt in any book, conflict.
I agree. That's a great answer. It is the conflict for sure. Okay, so I think we're going to get ready for another reading. Here's another fun reading from Mahtab, and I'm gonna disappear and let you guys enjoy the show.
Okay, so we're going to start here. Time to roll the camera, said Salman. Ramesh, join us, please. They all gathered around the kitchen table where Salman had laid out a hand-drawn diagram of the grounds. Okay, I should preface this by saying that the team is going to be playing this, they're about to just record a dance scene because Salman has decided that he's going to be doing this up the slope where you will be on high ground. I want a shot of you outlined against the sky. Then you race to this tree here, into Arman's waiting arms. Then you dance in unison and we cut. Did you practice the moves from that link I sent you? Yeah, said Maya, shooting a nervous glance out the window. She wrapped the sari around her bare arms as she shivered. Can we get this over with? I'm already cold. Couldn't. I actually tried to enact the same scene from the same song at home, and here's the result. Hi friends, this is Mahtab Narsimhan, and I am just about to run out in the ring to enact a scene from Project Bollywood. Wish me luck because it's raining and I'm freezing and I don't know how it's going to go, but
We'll check it out. Hi friends, this is Mahtab again. I've finished all my twirls and I'm freezing and I'm cold and my sari is wet. But you don't have to go through all of this stuff to read Project Bollywood. You can curl up in your cozy little room in a little armchair or wherever you're comfortable and read this fun story about Salman, who wants to shoot a movie script based on everything he's ever seen or all of the movies that he's ever seen. And it's a really powerful story about friendship and teamwork and running around in the rain. Enjoy.
That is fabulous.
I have to say that, thank you. I have to say that this must have been probably the 6th or 7th take, and I was twirling so much that I was kind of dizzy by the time this one came because I kept, moving out of screen. So that's how I was holding on to the tree saying, how many more twirls do I have to do? But honestly, after doing this, I have so much respect for, Bollywood actors, especially the women who do this endlessly in the rain. And if anyone kind of looks at these movies, you'll see you will always have a dance sequence. The guy is always dressed in warmer clothes. The women are in, freezing locations, snow on the ground, and they are in this flimsy sari and they do their bit. And I wanted to experience it. And I have to tell you, 45 minutes and I was in the shower because I was so cold.
I'm sure. And I will just say, I always knew how multi-talented you are. Not just, being such a brilliant writer, you're also an excellent cook. And now I know that, now that I've seen your dance skills, I know there's another talent that we can add to your list. And I'm not surprised, by the way. That was really great. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for freezing in the rain for our entertainment. Okay, so I see that we do have some questions, and I do want to make sure we save some time to get to questions from our audience. So are you up for?
Absolutely, let's go.
Questions? Okay, let's go. Christy Watson has a question for you. I loved hearing about the historic inspiration for this book from growing up in Mumbai, and I wonder how you worked that knowledge into a current book for teens today, especially one with a lower word count.
I have 2 words for that. Tanya Trafford, my absolutely fabulous editor who is not with Orca anymore, and I'm so going to miss working with her, but she was fabulous. I mean, honestly, I always struggled with books that have a low word count, but, great interest and just exciting. And it was Tanya who really helped me put that together and just, work it out. And every time I'd get the edit, she would apologize saying, I am going to strip it of all metaphors and similes and all beautiful stuff because it has to fit a certain profile. But even then, she still did such a fantastic job that it's, Tanya, I have to say that. She helped me a lot with this. And Tanya, if you're there, I know you're there. Thank you so much. I have a special video that I recorded just for you, which I will post after this. Okay.
Wonderful. Well, I never had the pleasure of working with Tanya, but I have done a few books with Orca, and I agree. They're really wonderful. A pleasure for an author to be working with a publisher that is just, the feedback is always great. The quality of the books are wonderful. The everything is just such a pleasure. So I agree. Okay, our next question is from Anita Yasuda, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing anyone's last name. What was the most challenging part of drafting this story and the most rewarding part of the revision process?
I think, this story came quite easily to me. I mean, it's just like, it's so much of what I lived through and just selecting the story that I wanted to work with. I think the story and the structure and everything was pretty simple because I knew that Salman, who is a little bit like me, who loves Hindi movies and wants to shoot one movie for his media project at school, that was easy. I think the hard part was getting it to the specific word count, getting it within certain parameters, making sure that it was understandable, and yet told a fun, fast-paced story. I think that was the most challenging part. And for that, I have Tanya to thank for helping me get it there. So yeah, that was the challenging part. But just like research. I think the research for this book was fantastic because I just had to watch a few movies to kind of get back into. No, I'm kidding. I just whenever I'm kind of I need a break, I will pick up and just watch a movie. And it's entertaining. I don't have to pay too much attention like I would have if I played Inception, which I had to watch twice because I couldn't get the plot the first time. So some of the movies need a lot of attention. Hindi movies, most of them, you can just put them on and relax. So yeah.
Wonderful. That is one of my favorite things about. I have this when I work with my accountant and I do my taxes for my work. I think I'm one of her only clients who can actually write off Netflix and cable because, sometimes again, for when you're writing stories and you're creating, you need to immerse yourself in books, but also in movies and just be on top of what's happening, around you culturally. So every now and then, well, for this book especially, watching movies, I can see how that fits. But also, it works for other books and plot points as well. And that is one of my favorite things about writing, about being a creator. Okay, we have some more questions. Karen Upper, hi Karen. Karen is joining us from Northern Ontario today. Karen would like to know, what do you do if your creativity flow seems damned? And by damned, she means stopped up.
Yeah. Hi, Karen. It's so good to see you. And I would say that luckily that's not happened to me very often, only because I have at least 2 to 3 projects on the go. And they're all different sorts. Like, one would be a picture book, one would be a middle grade novel. Most of them are middle grade novels. Plus, I might be working on ideas for another one. So whenever I get stuck on something, I just move to the next thing, or I just move to something else. And at the back of my mind, I'm constantly like, one of the great things about the human mind is that if you give it a problem, it will continue to try and solve it, even if you're not actively thinking about it. And I think that really holds true with books and plots. When you're stuck somewhere and you're thinking actively about a problem, even if you push it to the back of your mind and work on something else, you're still working on it. And if you give it, say, 2 or 3 days, sometimes even a week, and you come back to it, all of a sudden you have solved that problem. And honestly, I just have so many things going on. And if I'm stuck with a book, I can go and do some other work. And especially this year, like, everything is urgent. The moment I have ticked off something urgent on my list, there are another 5 things that are urgent, which must be done now. In fact, this week itself, I have got like 20 urgent things that have to take place. So yeah, I'm very rarely stuck. I'm very rarely stuck.
So, funny how you say that your mind keeps working on it. And I do find that, and I am so grateful for that part of human brain that works that way. And it happens to me too. So just a quick add-on question to Karen's. Do you find that the breakthroughs generally come, for me, one of 2 places, shower or walking my dog? I know that Kobe's no longer with you, but a nice long walk. Yes.
Yeah. For me, it's a walk. I mean, we've got a really lovely golf course behind the house. So, whenever we're doing that, sometimes I will not take my phone or listen to a podcast, only because that's the time when I think, but shower. Absolutely the shower. And I think I recently saw a documentary on chasing corals where the people were writing stuff underwater. And I said, that's something that I need to put in my shower so I can, I think most phones these days are waterproof or water resistant. So I could do that. But you know what? Just have a little thing in shower. I get my best ideas in the shower, because you know what, you can't do anything at that time other than shower. And I think that's when, you know, your ideas come, because normally you're always multitasking. And that's one of the things that my goal for this year has been, yes, I do need to multitask, but I also need to focus on each task at a time and do it properly, rather than, you know, because really doing 5 things at the same time doesn't mean you're doing 5 things at the same time. It means you're half, you know, doing half a job, you know, over a period of time. That's it. So yeah.
Yes, writers should be the cleanest people on the planet, with all the time we run to the shower to unstick our thoughts.
Well, I have to say, in Indians too, because there was Shah Rukh Khan was interviewed on David Letterman on Netflix. You know, there's this new series that says this guest needs no introduction, and David Letterman had asked Shah Rukh the same question, saying, "Why is everyone dancing around in the rain? Like you're always in the water." And Shah Rukh says, "Because we're very clean or something. You know, we love to have a bath." So there you go. And it's just, it's part of being an Indian.
Yeah. Okay, we have lots more questions, so let's get to the next one. Arthur Slade has this to say. Great work on the indie and traditional publishing. Do you enjoy having control in the indie part of it? And do you enjoy giving up control in the traditional realm?
What a great question. And I have to say a huge, huge shout out to Arthur Slade, who is one of my absolute favorite writers, friends, because he has been a huge help in my indie publishing journey. Like I would not have attempted this if I didn't know he was there for advice. And of course, he's, you know, is just so generous in sharing his journey so that we all learn. But yes, Arthur, I mean, I love the control, like, you know, the covers that I've been able to do. In fact, I can't wait to share the new covers for the third, the Tara trilogy that I've come up with, because they are just gorgeous. And I loved all of that control. The fact that on the traditional side, I don't have that much control, but, you know, when you balance it out, there is a whole publishing house that does all of the stuff that you're doing alone. And I remember that, you know, I used to get literally paralyzed when I would sit in front of my computer and have to learn something new. So it's like you want to do all of this stuff, but before you can do it, you've got to learn it. So if I had to format a book, first I had to learn vellum. Then I wanted, you know, I was sharing my books out to ARC readers. But even before I could deliver the book to them, I had to learn about book funnel in terms of how to deliver the book to them. So every step, there are tools, but before you can use those tools, you have to learn them. And oh my God, I mean, there were times I just sit in there and said, I can't do this. And then I would take a deep breath and have some chocolate, maybe some wine, and say, yes, I can do this. I can do this. And then, of course, I had Art at the back end. Art, please help. And there are so many urgent messages that I've sent him, urgent in the subject title. So thank you, Art.
And not only did you do it, but you do it so well, so well. I've seen the covers, I've seen the books, and you just are an inspiration, I must say. Okay, a few more questions because I know we're getting low on time, and I hope I pronounce our next questioner's name properly. Ishan Mani, I would like to know, what was the most difficult part of the writing process for you?
No, I think, I don't know what is difficult. Like I've been doing writing for so long. So each story is, you know, it's difficult when you're kind of putting it together, when you're doing the draft. And the first thing is, you know, it's in your mind and you're not quite sure where it's going. And then you try and put it onto paper. But I think for me, getting the first draft down is probably hard because I have to keep going. I have to make sure that I don't stop so that I lose the passion for the project, you know, and that my biggest worry is if something comes up in between, which is more kind of, you know, time sensitive, and I have to put something aside and then get back to it, for me, that turns out to be very hard. Like if I have to write a new draft, I just try and avoid any distractions because the passion that I have for a story kind of carries me through that first draft, which is horrible. But then the revision, you know, that's when you're cleaning it out, you're making it stronger, you're polishing it, you're finding the themes and you're making them stronger and you're having lots more layers in the story. So that's kind of fun. But the first draft is hard. And I always try my best not to have any distractions at that time. Yeah. And thanks, Ishan, for that question. Good to see you here.
Excellent, excellent question. Excellent answer. A few more. Do we have time for a few more? I think so. Okay, from Jean Mills. You are so prolific and so successful with lots of books out and more coming. Did you ever face rejection and doubt yourself as a writer? If so, how did you get through that? Great question.
Yeah, I know. Lovely question, Jean, and lovely to see you here. Yes, I have faced a lot of rejection and I still continue to face rejection. In fact, I will share that this indie project that I did, which started out with The Astrologer's Warning, that was actually on submission in Canada and in the US for almost a year and a half, and it was just rejections. And I just knew that this is a good story because it's basically scary stories meets Asian mythology. And I knew that there is a market for it, but it was just rejected, soundly rejected. Not even one person picked it up. And I said, you know what? This is going to be my indie project, and this is what I'm going to publish. And I did. And it was not just that. The second book is based on a Chinese myth. The third one is based on a Japanese myth, but all of them are set in a contemporary setting. So, I still get rejections all the time, but it's just that these days it's kind of easier to bear. And one of the things that I really love with this last year that I spent in indie pub is that I know that the first time I publish something really good, I am going to send it out. I do have an agent who's fully supportive of my, indie publishing as well. So I'll give first dibs to any publisher who wants to publish it. But if they don't, then I know I have plan B. And that plan B is I'm going to publish it if I believe in it. And if I can make sure that it's a quality product, which means that you go through all of the stuff that a publishing house would be, which is, a proper developmental editing, a proper, copy edit, a proper proofread, a really good, fantastic cover. So which means you have to spend all of the time and the effort and the money for all of that. But I know that I can do a quality product. So I'm happy now because now I have plan B.
Lovely. That's great. Okay, we have a question from Valerie Sherrard joining us all the way from Miramichi, New Brunswick. Valerie says, how has being a writer impacted your reading? Do you find you notice flaws more now or think of ways you'd have done things differently? Great.
What a great question, Valerie. And so good to see you here. I think the biggest thing for me being a writer is that when I start reading a story and I see the foreshadowing and I see, the proverbial gun on the mantelpiece, I'm like, yeah, this is going to happen. And it's the same thing with movies. I'm sure all writers do that. The moment you see something or, the writer draws attention to it, by some words where it does not quite fit into the story, it's like, okay, this is going to be a plot point. This is coming up later. And sure enough, it does. And if the foreshadowing is not there, then I'm like, they should have said something about this in chapter 1 or chapter 2. And then, it didn't quite happen. So it does color a little bit of your reading, but I don't mind. And of course, when someone's written a really, really fantastic novel and you completely get lost in it, that's a huge learning thing as well. I'm constantly making notes. Oh yeah, this is the way she did this. Oh, this is the way she did that, or whatever. And I'm taking notes. So it's a great experience.
I find that when I'm for instance, when I'm watching a movie, what sticks out to me is plot holes. Because that's something you're just trying to be so conscious of when you're writing and putting a story together. And movies, they have to obviously condense the story into a much smaller time frame or experience. And the plot holes, and my kids know, and now they do it too. They all yell plot hole when something just is not making sense or out of sequence or just off. So I am definitely, I think the little inner editor in us, when we experience stories of any kind of kicks in sometimes. Yeah. I know mine does.
Definitely.
You can't turn off that critique partner voice in your head. Okay, we have a question from Liz Cram. And I think she's asking this on behalf of Chloe. Do you know who Chloe is? Chloe asks, how do you decide how to end or start a story? Great question.
Yeah. Hi, Liz, and great to see you here. And hi, Chloe. I think I have started, I mean, ever since I was familiar with Brandon Sanderson and writing excuses, one of the things that he had said is that he plots backward and writes forward, which basically means that he has the ending of the story in mind, and then he works in reverse in terms of what the beginning should be. So if he wants, you know, the main character to be very strong and courageous and brave, then the beginning of that story is where the character is not confident or is very scared of things and stuff like that. And that's exactly how I did with Valley of the Rats. I figured out what I wanted the story or how I wanted it to end. And one of the great things of doing that is you can have the most spectacular ending ever and then plot it backwards. But then when you're writing it, of course, you write it forwards. And I thought, I mean, I've been doing that for my last few books, and I found that it really works, because sometimes when you're writing it organically, you may take certain twists and turns in the story and your end may not be as spectacular as you wanted. But if you know, this is my end, this is the way I want the story to end, with all the bells and whistles and fireworks, and then you go backwards, I think it's a lot easier. So for me, it's always, I know my ending, and then I start on the opposite end, which is, and there's a really good tool on the internet. If you just look for 7-point story structure, it was used, I believe, in a lot of, I know that Dan Wells used it, which is another writer on the Writing Excuses panel. But if you just Google it, it gives you the 7-point story structure, and it tells you the recommended order in which to write it. And it always starts with resolution, and then the hook, and then your midpoint, and then your plot turns and pinches and all of that stuff, which is, it's a great tool. It's a great tool to plot a story.
I'm taking notes.
I'll send it to you. I'll give you a tutorial then. It's so easy.
So, I remember very distinctly, I mentioned your first novel, The Third Eye, and I think that came out one season before my first novel, which was Mackenzie Lost and Found, by the same publisher, Dundurn Press, and we had the same editor, Barry Jowett. And I'll never forget when I was working on that book and Barry was editing the manuscript, he said, "This is great, but your story doesn't start, like, you've written maybe 25 chapters. He said, your story really starts where chapter 5 begins. So I want you just to get rid of all the other stuff and start there." And I never forgot that experience, because, I wasted all that time writing 5 chapters that were just, useless. And I mean, I did incorporate some of that stuff into the book, but it was a lesson to me to really give some thought to where is the perfect jumping off point for the story. So that's definitely something that it's important to consider when you're crafting your books.
Yes.
I'm looking at the time, and I think we've answered almost everything here. So I'm going to announce the winners of our prizes, and I'm going to thank everyone for their wonderful questions. I have a little randomizer here, and the names that it has chosen are Anita Yasuda, Jean Mills, and Ishan Mani. You are the winners of our prize pack. So congratulations. And I'm going to ask each one of you to please put your mailing address. I believe you can put it into the Q&A box because that should be private. So no one else will see it. And please give us your mailing address, and we'll make sure that those lovely prize packages get out to you as soon as possible. Mahtab, we're just running up to the end of our hour here. I'm going to hand the floor over to you.
Great. Yes. Okay. Well, so first of all, I just want to thank all of you guys for coming out here and helping me celebrate, the birthday of Project Bollywood. I want to thank Orca Book Publishers, and especially Olivia, who's been just so fantastic in helping me organize this. Definitely the Writers Union of Canada, who sponsored this, this event, and a huge thank you to you, Deb, for agreeing to interview me and helping me do this. And thank you so much. I could not have done it without you, and I could not have asked for a better partner. So thank you. And of course, I just want to say the person who's not on the screen right now is Sigmund Brauer, who has put this entire thing together. And honestly, this virtual launch is one of the best that I've ever done, because we could have the videos and we could have all of that stuff. So Sigmund, thank you so much. And if any of you are looking for a virtual launch, definitely reach out to him, because he has been amazing in setting it all up, and it's been so seamless. So thank you, Sigmund. And other than that, it is the first day of summer. So I wish you all a wonderful, safe, happy summer. And thank you all for coming out.
Thank you, Mahtab, for allowing us to join you on your book's birthday. So I hope that everybody, if you didn't win a copy, that I do hope that you pick up a copy, because it's an excellent read for the young person in your life. But I mean, my favorite books are middle grade. I read all of them that I can get my hands on. So this is really for anyone who really enjoys a fun, fast-paced story. So I hope you'll pick it up. And thank you, Mahtab. And thank you to everyone who joined us today out there on the other side of the screen. We thank you for your questions and your participation, and for sharing this part of the first day of summer with us.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.